Welcome to Shipp's Tips, episode 19. On this episode, I've brought you to a local venue to me. It's actually called the Gloucester Canal. It's a venue that I used to fish week in, week out, years and years ago. And it was really hard back then, but things have changed. Not just on the Gloucester Canal, but a lot of canals you go to now, like the Gloucester, you know, big, deep canals. The fishing is actually better than what it was years ago. Now, we don't know why, you know, whether that's just because the fish have done well and they've bred, but things have changed. You know, with the introduction of, there's massive carp in these canals as well. So you get carp anglers. Actually, you might not see them, but they are on the bank during the week and weekends. And I think the bream, the hybrids, you know, everything is actually switched on to fish meal ground bait. The introduction of pellets, it all has the effect on using different ground baits. You know, many years ago, all my ground baits were crumb based. Now, a lot of these venues, such as the Gloucester Canal, is about fishing with fish meal and maybe introducing some crumb-based mix, which obviously I'll talk to you in a moment. But the first thing I'm going to do, I'm ready to go now. I want to introduce some bait. I've not got a hook length on, I've got a medium feeder. We're not going to be putting lots and lots of bait in today. It's not that. Even though I'm hoping to catch bream and skimmers, I'm not going to put a lot of bait. I've only mixed up about just over a kilo of ground bait. And that's what's so lovely about coming to a place like the Gloucester Canal. You don't need to break the bank to catch an absolute bucket load of bream. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to cast out. I've got a medium ground bait feeder on there. I'll run you through all the rigs and stuff as we get going, and I just want to introduce a little bit of bait. I'm going to put like 6 feederfuls in, soft ground bait, literally a few casters. So I'm going to put my ground bait in like that and give it literally just enough squeeze to get it out to where I want to fish. And we'll talk about where I'm fishing and things like that when I get going. So let's get a little bit of ground bait in to start with. Near the far bank lid is, it's lovely and deep there. Just let that hit the bottom. Strike that out. It always takes, well, maybe you catch straight away. It always takes, you've got to give yourself a little bit of time on such a place like the Gloucester Canal. So again, just really, really softly. Nice little chuck to the far bank. Just count it down. Got a count of like 4 there, which is lovely and deep, especially when we're probably fishing like 4 to 5 meters off the far bank. And that's something you've got to look for on these canals. Depth is really important. Look at the color. The more colored these venues are, sometimes the closer you can actually catch to the far bank. You'll find that even on really small canals. When I used to fish the Kennehaven Canal years ago, it was exactly the same. If it was really dirty, a lot of your bonus fish would be caught literally in like 3 foot, to between 2 and 3 foot of water, where if it was clearer, you might have to drop down the shelf a little bit. And today, it's actually, for this canal, it's got a nice bit of colour in it. I can probably see 18 inches down. So it's a really nice colour, but that does change. Let's get a couple more out there. You can strike a couple out on the way down, so it gives like a bit of a carpet on the bottom. I'm going to put 1 more feeder full in, get a hook length on, and then I'll start fishing. Now things have changed, you know, not just on the Gloucester Canal that I'm on today, but a lot of venues. You know, there's a lot of carp anglers on these venues now. They're piling in, you know, hemp, boilies, pellets. And pellets, I think, is the key component to these sort of venues now when you're fishing for the quality fish. Now, my ground baits are going to suit. So the 3 components, or 3 different ground baits, if you like, I've got for today, is 1 is fluoro rocks. Now, it's something I use, you know, I think it introduces a little bit of colour, you know, when you're fishing, going between, you know, different coloured pinkies, maggots. I just think it's just a nice addition to your ground bait. It's something that I had a lot of time now. Tamar, where I was the weekend, I put it in. I think it's just nice for them fish to settle on. And we all know carp anglers are so switched on to different coloured baits, and these bream are switched on as well. So I've got a few fluoro rocks. My main sort of ingredient of ground bait today is the F1 green. It's F1 dark, F1 green, whatever you fancy. Looking at the water today, I think this is going to be absolutely sock on. It's like sort of a milky colour, and I think that'd be perfect for today. Now, one other ground bait is sweet skimmer. Now, this is a biscuity sort of base ground bait. You know, it's got a few more particles in it because I am fishing for quality fish today, and like the F1 is really fine, and this is just going to add some sort of more feed to me mix. I'm not going to put a load in. I'm actually going to feed sort of 1 and a bit pints of sweet skimmer and sort of 2 to 2.5 pints of F1 green. So let's do that right now. So like I do on a lot of time for you guys is use a little tub. So let's get the sweet skimmer in there. I've actually just got, because I used this on the weekend, look at that, absolutely perfect. So that tub is about 1.25 pints. Stick that in the bucket. And like I said, I'm going to put 2 parts F1 green. So that's 1. Absolutely beautiful smell. You see why you catch so many fish on it. So let's get that in the bucket. Now you can actually put the fluoro rocks in first or after, it doesn't matter. So let's put them in first, get them out of the way. I'm not going to put loads in because I'm only mixing like a kilo of ground bait. I'm going to put like a handful like that, and then you can look at it when you finish mixing and see what it looks like, and you can add them if you want, but don't put too many at the start. Let's get that in there. Mix that around dry first. You have to apologise for the old legs, they've not been out, even though with summer, we're in the height for summer now, so if it's glaring you on the camera, I got to apologise. So we're not going to mix loads and loads of ground bait up. Like I said, it's about just over 1 kilo because I'm only fishing the feeder today. And honestly, coming to a venue like the Gloucester Canal that I have done for years, you can have such a fantastic day's fishing. Bream, skimmers, there's big pommies in here, you know, all sorts. And what's happened over the years as well, since I used to fish the Gloucester Canal many years ago, the bream have actually got bigger. There's some real nice big bream in here now. I don't know why, but you know, obviously mixing these sort of ground baits up, that's what we're aiming to catch today. Hopefully some big bream and hopefully skimmers and pommies. Right, so I've mixed that round dry. Tip a little bit of water in. I would say in about 1 kilo of ground bait, it's about a pint or just over a pint of water. But with that sweet skimmer, because sweet skimmer is like quite a biscuity sort of base ground bait, sometimes you've got to add that little bit more water to it. Because like I said, it does actually, you know, get the water into it. If that was just F1 green, you could literally put the water, like a pint of water in 3 pints of F1 green, it'd be perfect. But with that sweet skimmer in there, I'm gonna have to work a little bit harder, a little bit more water. And just mix that. Obviously I've just got to me peg, I've plonked my gear down off my trolley, and the first thing I want to do is mix my ground bait. You could do this before you leave home, that's entirely up to you. And that, you can smell like the sweet skimmer and the F1 together, and I think it makes a real sort of caramelly smell. It's absolutely beautiful, I love it. Now that's just sort of sticky mix at the moment. Now I'm going to leave that, and what I'll do, I'll come back to it in sort of 10-15 minutes. I'll set my rod in that up in my box. I'll come back to it, see what it looks like. I've got a nice riddle there, which is one of the smallest Preston riddles. I think it's like a 4 mil. I'll put it through there and it'll be absolutely perfect for us to fish in today. Well, there's another bite. Just as a boat's gone past, actually. Literally just cast out. So I started the session off with like half a dozen, just slightly bigger feederfuls of just ground bait, very, very little in it, which is what I do on a canal like this. And we started off, caught a couple of tiny little fish, a couple of little baby roach, a couple of little tiny skimmers, and they were literally, you know, sort of 2 ounces. And I've started getting a couple of indications, a couple of little liners, and this is my 5th skimmer. And they're the sort of lovely size skimmers, these. Really crafty though. I just had the Jake actually. These sort of size fish on their day can be an absolute nightmare, but mega enjoyable. This might be a pommy, or what I call a pommy, which is a silver bream. I'm not sure yet. No, I think it's a skimmer. And I've just gone down in feeder size. I'll talk you through that in a minute. But it's like they're in your peg, fighting really hard though for the size of the fish today. Proper scrap. I know a lot of people say, oh, bream don't scrap. They need to come on the Gloucester Canal. But we've not caught any sort of bream yet, if you like. They're all skimmers, or good size skimmers anyway. Let's just get the hook out of him and hold him up. So that's what we're catching at the moment, them. That's my 5th one. So it's taken, like I said, it's taken like 45 minutes to an hour to catch these, but lovely fish. And I'll talk you through my setup now before I cast back out. So rod wise, I've got an 11-foot SL, Superior SL, which is absolutely, yeah, but that's what they're designed for, this sort of fishing. Beautiful rod. And I've just got 012 absolute braid. I think braid's really important. It plays a massive part in my skimmer fishing over the last few years, once I've got used to it. And a simple paternoster setup. And all I've got, if you looked on my sort of Q&As that I've done over the last couple of years, and some of the stuff that we've done with Zolt in the garage, you can actually find this rig. Really, really easy to tie. And all I've got is basically a loop to loop of about 1 metre of line to my braid. So I've got my braid there, loop to loop then to 6, well, I'm actually using 8 pounds sinking feeder mono, but if you wanted to bring it down to 6 pound, you can. I don't think it makes that much difference. I've got a simple paternoster set up like that. And then feeder wise, I've got the new hex mesh feeders on. 15 grams, nice and small. I started on a slightly bigger one, but I think because we're casting in more regularly now, I think I've just brought my feeder size down, try not to sort of spook them. And that was a classic. It was literally cast out as the braid sinking, my tip was like that. And that's what the little feeders and stuff are all about. I've actually got, well, we do 2 sorts of the X mesh. We do that one, which is sort of a little bit more enclosed. And then we do that one there, which is sort of opened up and lets the ground bait out. So I'm going between these 2 at the moment and then seeing what's best. I've just put this one on to cram the more ground bait in a little bit harder. So it feels like they're off the bottom. I said to Jake when we were filming, it just feels like they're off the bottom and they just now and again they go down. That's what we're trying to do. Cast quite regularly, every sort of 4 or 5 minutes, and just you get the odd one on the drop or just as it settles. Then I've got a 013 hook length, really, really simple, down to an 18 N30 hook. And at the moment I'm fishing about 2 foot below my feeder. I've tried a little bit shorter, but it wasn't so good. But we've only just started, so there's a lot, you know, the whole day's to go yet. And I've caught most of my fish, I'll just show you, on a piece of dendro. I'm actually getting the smaller worms that I've got in my pot. Let's see if I can get another one. I mean, worms are pretty big today, to be honest. But I'm getting a nice sort of size dendro, a medium size if you like that. Hooking him through the head and just coming down about 2 inches. So it's quite a big hook bait, really. A nice hook bait. Sits on that 18N30 perfectly. And all I'm putting through is a little bit of me chop worm, literally like a 5 pence worth size, and a few dead maggots. I've cancelled out the casters, I just think they weren't really doing much. Compacting it in a little bit. Make sure there's no push bites coming. Chucking it out, let it hit the clip, and just follow it down. Like that. And I can always put, you know, later on I might have to put a bigger feeder on again. But it's really enjoyable fishing.
Good day for fishing.
Yeah, thanks mate. Good day for fishing, he said. It's a bit hot for fishing, but it's enjoyable. So just just letting the slack, because it is, the canal's just slightly running from left to right, which is quite nice really, because I can it's sort of sinking me braid. I can put me rod on me rest, and you can see the braid coming down, and it's actually keeping enough tension, so if I do get an indication, I can actually see it. So it's nice at the moment. As I said, it took 45 minutes or so to actually start getting, I actually caught little fish immediately, and that happens on a lot of canals. You can go over, you can get a little run of little fish, and all of a sudden it changes. There we go, look at that. Absolutely lovely fishing. Oh, that feels, and they are absolutely fighting. I'm glad I got a 13 power line on actually. I did say to Jake, they're trying to get you in the pads on the inside. So I'm going to take the clip off of the back line on this one. This feels a slightly better one. Honestly, come on canals like this and you can have such a good day's fishing with just a few, like I said, a few baits, a little bit of ground bait. I've got a few micros done up as well. There is an odd micro in me ground bait, but nothing. I don't think it's making a lot of difference. I think the ground bait is sort of drawing them in, and you just put a few freebies in there. Simple fishing, lovely rod. Like I said, the SLs, it doesn't get better for this style of fishing. It doesn't matter what size skimmers you're catching, whether you're catching bream or sort of 6-ounce skimmers, these rods will do everything for you. So just take it nice and easy. I've got a few pads down the inside, so I've got to go a bit careful. This feels a better fish. This is what we come for today, and honestly, it's not the best conditions. I mean, it's absolutely roasting today. It's probably getting up to sort of 30 degrees, and that's why I've put me trackies on now. My legs have been out an hour. That was enough for them, because we all know, got to go careful. I mean, that's a proper good scrap, that. Oh yeah, that's better. Oh yes. That's the ones we want. Bit of slime in my net, which is always a good sign. Look at him. It's like 2 inches of dendra. Come on, baby. Absolutely stunning fish, that. I don't know how big that is. It's probably 3.5 pound, I would say, at least. So what a great fish to catch on camera. Got to get my hand around him, to be honest. Let's take that off. God, dear me, he is proper thick. Let's get the hook out of him anyway. Oh, he's proper had that. So that was literally like seconds of the feeder hitting the surface. Not even on the, you know, that never used to happen years ago. That's how these fish have actually changed over the years. They're switched on to the noise, your feeder going in, all the fish meal, ground baits. You know, everybody think, you know, bream, they ain't switched on, but honestly, look at that. Absolutely stunning. Gloucester Canal bream. 3.5 pound that one. Let's get him back. So that's the update at the moment. I started off with a slightly longer hook length. I didn't think that was right, especially when I got a few indications. And I did say to Jake, talking to Jake, because we both fish the Gloucester Canal. Jake fishes it a lot nowadays with his team, and it's really interesting that we speak about the Gloucester Canal. It's not everybody's cup of tea, but honestly, if you want to just come out, have a lovely day, one rod, just a few feeders, pick out them little bits, little bit smaller dendras, like that one there. That's the one we want, like that. Perfect size, that. That seems to be the bait, like that. A little bit of worm, tiny little bit of, a few dead maggots. Push that into the feeder and just compact it a little bit, so it actually gets it down to the bottom at the moment. Now I've got them in my peg, I'm compacting it in, let that at the bottom, oh sorry, the surface, let it go down. Just a couple of couple of little tweaks on the reel just to get that braid coming in at you. So I've got my tip cranked round a little bit now, and then that sort of toe of the canal is actually helping the braid go down. I can actually leave me rod a minute. So the tip, it's a 0.75 tip, which I think is my favourite tip of the SL Superior rods. So if you're looking for a nice tip for any sort of your skimmer fishing, just get a 0.75 to an ounce. I like 0.75s, I think they're absolutely ideal. So that's sort of sunk the braid now. And you'll get good spells and bad spells on the Gloucester. You know, sometimes the one thing you can't do is just sit there and sit there. You have to be, and this is how it's changed. It's a bit like a lot of venues I go to now with feeder fishing. I think we've learned a lot over the years as well, that sitting there, there is days when you've got to do that. But, you know, when we're in the warmer weather, you have to be active in your fishing. Same with pole fishing. You've got to be active, you know, in and out, feeding, trying to drag the fish in your peg. Use different feeders, one to make a bit of a cloud, you know, to draw them in, and when they are in your peg, and that's what we were doing earlier. I was putting the ground bait in soft, you know, leaving it out there sort of between 3 and 5 minutes, and then I started getting a few liners. There we go. Now that's actually a real aggressive bite and it's come towards me, but it's not a big fish, that one. Oh, I don't know actually, it's not a bad sized fish, but it's nice now. You just feel like you had a few liners, you've changed things around, slightly different feeder, not letting the ground bait out so much, and the fish have to get to the bottom to actually get some feed. So the ground bait is just on a dry side. A nice little skimmer, that. I love them size skimmers, I do. It's like being back at Tamar. Crafty as you like some days, them. Pounder. Look at that. Absolutely mint condition. Beautiful. I love catching those size fish as well as the big ones, but these for me are like what make your day. I can use that piece of worm again. So hour and a half we've been fishing. Looks like we're going to be on for a lovely day's fishing, which is what it's all about. And I did say at the start of the film, you know, you might have to wait. That worm's actually all right. Tiny, just go for the same little process, little tiny bit of, little blob of worm, a few maggots. Give it a little squeeze, not too much. Little nice cast. Slightly to me right that, but we'll leave it there. Right, we've had a great little session, to be honest. We've had plenty of skimmers, one decent bream which you've seen on film, but we had a little problem with small fish, and you can probably see from my hook bait there, I've put now 3/4 of a medium dendron. I've chopped some more worms up, just a little bit more sort of beefy, if you like, bigger pieces in that. So they're nice fresh worms. I'm not chopping loads of worms up because of the heat and stuff. I'm trying to keep them as fresh as possible, and I think that's really important when you're out fishing in temperatures like we are today. And let's just see if I can get another one, because it just felt we had a little bit of a spell where it went off. You still got to keep casting regularly. We've had some lovely skimmers, honestly, like these pound fish. But the amazing thing is, I've tried little bits of worm today. Oh, look at that, that was on the drop, that. I reckon that might have been another little fish again, even though you've got that great big piece of dendron. There has been a few little fish about, little rudd and roach. And that's why I've sort of gone to a bigger hook bait. Just a couple of casters, a few dead maggots in. Get that back over. There's quite a bit of stuff floating about today, which is a bit of a pain. And that was on a bit of the wind keeps changing, it keeps going right to left, left to right. And there's a little bit of sort of like, I don't know, I think where the boats have gone up and down. They've obviously chewed a little bit of weed off the bottom, and there's a few bits of strands floating. That's better. Right, let's get sorted out. So get that braid down. Like I said, I'm not worried too much. Like I said, big hook bait. And just putting a little bit of neat worm in me feeder. A few dead maggots. And just a couple of casters. But that big hook bait today is so much better. And you'll find that on some waters you go to, some of the venues I go to, you think you can't catch on little bits of worm. And you think, I'll just try like a bit like a big fish hook bait. If you were fishing for carp or proper big bream, you put it on, and the fish that you want to catch on little baits are picking out the big baits. And that's what today seems like. Oh, I think that was not sure if it was a bite or a liner then. It looked like a bite. The bait's not touched, just put a bit more of that worm in. Just a little blob. Get it in the middle of the feeder. Straight back out again. Lovely fish, you know. Really quite aggressive bites as well, some of them. So I've had some drop bats. I think the shelf's quite steep where we're fishing. And some of them have been like little fast jabs, and it all drops back. Your tip just goes completely slack. And they've sort of been I think they've probably been the better size fish that we've caught, really. It always feels like you want to be fishing little bits of worm, but you know, especially the fish that we've been catching today, but it's just not been right. Definitely worm is definitely, like I said, there is a few small little roach and baby little skimmers and that about, and I think with maggots at the moment, which I'm surprised about that, because I thought normally when you've got some sensible size fish in your peg, them little fish seem to just sort of fade away. It's a bit of a result, well, it's a result for us to even to catch fish today, with it being so bright. It ain't the best of skimmer and bream weather, I'll tell you that for nothing. No wind, it's like flat calm. And even this style of fishing on the, you know, just a natural venue like the Gloucester Canal is so apparent nowadays that the days of when I used to come, leave it out there for literally, you know, ages to catch a skimmer or a bream, it's just gone. You've got to keep working out. There is days obviously when you're not on many fish and you have to leave it there because you're literally fishing for one or two fish, but if you're on a few fish, even on this Gloucester Canal now, you've got to be in and out really, really regularly, I think. It's like, now I've had a couple of little indications, just feels like I've got to wind in, set the trap again. A bit more worm, few maggots. Just put a couple of little micro 2mm pellets in. I'm not going to squeeze it that hard this time. Just a little bit softer ground bait in the feeder. Just get everything set. Not really sort of tightening down to it. The actual flow, it's what might have put them off a little bit as well. It's not really moving now. The canal is stopped. And I remember years ago, the best time to catch on the Gloucester was when it was just towing slightly, and it always had to tow towards sharpness. When it towed toward Gloucester, which was to the left, it was never as good, and I don't know why. Normally the flow is always normally to the right. There's definitely 100% an odd fish in my peg. You get a tiny little indication. I don't think they're little baby fish either. There we go. Had to wait a little bit longer for that. Couple of bit indications again. I'll tell you what, they're not easy to catch, I'll tell you. You definitely, and they're the ones that I said earlier that are really difficult to catch some days. They're not the big ones. They can be really frustrating. They're like 14-ounce ones, I reckon, maybe a little bit bigger. But lovely fish to catch. They're nice because you can mess around with your feeding, your feeders. Yeah, that's one of them. That's the ones that are an absolute pain some days. Just put the ground bait in really soft, messing around with it. They're the ones. On their day, they can be an absolute nightmare. On other days, you can just get one every chuck as soon as it hits the bottom. But it's great to catch them fish on a natural venue like the Gloucester Canal. Let's get him back. I've got a time for a couple more, I reckon, and I'll show you what I've caught. Well, we're not going to keep these out long, but what a fantastic day I've had on a boiling hot day on the Gloucester Canal. There's well over 30 pound in there. Mostly those skimmers that I think are really tough to catch on the day, and today has definitely been one of them days. These sort of size ones that's just flicked out then, they're really tough to catch. I've had indications. I've not gone through hardly any bait, probably just over 1/4 kilo of worms, a few dead maggots, a few casters, and obviously a few micros. So get out on your canals, like such as the Gloucester Canal. It's lovely for me. It's like 20 minutes from my house. Absolutely a fantastic venue on its day. And I hope you enjoyed Shipp's tips, and see you on the bank sometime.